Welcome back to the Observer of Football podcast. And today we have one of the greatest ever Canadian footballers here today to talk about his career and his current time here with Cavalry FC. And of course, we're talking about Nicholas Ledgerwood. Nick, how are you doing today? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Keith.
Nick, I just have to say, when I started up this podcast several years ago, honestly, you're one of the names I had on my list because just your journey, just through your professional football career has been a fascinating one. And the reason why I say that's because, Canadian football has grown a lot since, the early 2000s up to even to this present day. And it's grown a lot for the better. Like, even for myself, I was born in the mid 90s here, kind of went up through the mid 2000s, 2010s. There weren't a lot of pathways for us as we see today with a lot of the youth players. And when I look at your career and just how far you're able to go, I really just think of you as like a trailblazer. Because again, you had that path. I mean, going all the way out to Germany and playing professional there. But I think this is a podcast that for the viewers who are watching, I just want to really highlight this whole journey that you had. Because again, at that time, it was really unheard of for a Canadian to go as far as you did.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It definitely wasn't easy. There was some sacrifices along the way, but I think that's what made it so special, right? Was the sacrifices and then actually having a long career in Europe. I was over there for 12 and a half years. And I think that's more of the special thing than anything else is actually lasting that long over there. Because I think a lot of Canadians do get the opportunity to go try out with the team or train with the team for a couple months, but to actually have that prolonged career, I think that was the actual special part of it.
You know what? And I want to dig into that a little bit more as well. But we kind of talked to it about before we kind of started this podcast here. But coming from lovely Winnipeg, Manitoba here, minus 40 weathers. You had your humble beginnings there in Lethbridge, Alberta. So, I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong, still cold, but I mean, some probably better weather than where I am. But you know what? I just kind of wanted to talk just a little bit about like your youth and just like, obviously, hockey and other type of sports too, or a lot of popular sports here. But soccer, especially when you're around when time you're growing up, maybe not has been as popular as it is now. But what kind of inspired you to get into the game of soccer? Was it more of a family related influence? Like, how do you go into the sport in general?
Yeah, I get asked that quite a bit, especially coming from Lethbridge, which is a hockey town. And to be honest, it was kind of through, I guess, fluke, trial and error. My parents put me into t-ball. My parents weren't soccer people at all to begin with. And my dad just put me into t-ball as a young kid. I was 5 years old, and he noticed right away, like, yeah, t-ball is not for me. I was running everywhere. I was being busy. And actually, he was just like, I need a sport to keep him busy. Like, let him run. He can do his thing. And that was like the Timbit soccer, he can run out there, chase a ball all he wants. And it was actually our neighbors who were a little bit older, and they were playing organized soccer as well. And I think that's kind of where the connection started to be made, is like I would go play with the little kids, but then I would be able to watch my neighbors, do so much more with the ball or play in the park. And I think that's kind of where the connection started to be made and grow from there. But Lethbridge was definitely a unique place, and a lot of people thought it would have been a negative uh, to grow up there and play. But I think because it was so small, I was able to move up age groups quite quickly, and they were quite open to that. When I was 14, I was playing with, at the time it was Lethbridge, Croatia, and that was the Alberta Major Soccer League. And I think if there was any real positive, that was huge for my development because, at the age of 14, you're playing with men. You had to think quicker, move quicker, and just be a lot more mature at that age.
Yeah, and it really kind of speaks to just like how that it's really kind of help accelerate your growth. Like you're playing against like men, right? And I guess that's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things too that helps really accelerate that growth. And I just have to ask this question too because it's a fun one we always like to ask on the podcast here. But did you have any siblings growing up? And if so, did they also play soccer?
Yeah, I had an older sister, 2 years older than me. She played a little bit of soccer growing up, probably for max 3 4 years. But our my dad was actually the coach of our team growing up until we got probably to the age of 12, 13. So my dad, who had no soccer background, literally would go try and get a book on your basic soccer drills that help coach a team because there wasn't any real, I guess, certified coaches for those age groups. And I think one thing that he did that I still remember is, as he saw me progress very quickly, he would restrict games and training sessions for me. I could only play with my left foot, or I had to make sure everybody else got a goal before I got a goal, type of thing. So he would manipulate the games a little bit, because he knew I was advanced, which would put me out of my comfort zone even at that age.
And you know what, too? I was actually going to kind of talk about that subject, too, just about the whole youth coaching in general, how it's progressed. Because, like, it was just with other sports like hockey, like a lot of parents and who are coaches and volunteer their time, they have like at least a background knowledge about what some of the basics are and how to coach their kids. With soccer, especially in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, many were just volunteer parents that had no idea about the sport. And you know what? I think that's something that good on your dad, though, for being able to like think outside the box, right? Like, hey, using your weak foot or having the kid score before you, it just
and I think that was something that really stuck with me, rather than trying to let me rack up as many goals as I could per game and go about it that way. He actually challenged me in a way of, he knew if I was going to get better, it would be through this avenue and not through the likes of being a top goal scorer on an under-9 team. 100%. So yeah, I definitely have a lot of, I guess, thanks for my father in the way that he was such an uneducated coach in that way, but how he was able to help me progress.
Oh, well, I'd love to hear that too. And I mean, that's one of some of the outside thinking that I wish that, for more grassroots soccer in general, that I hope that a lot of parents and coaches can take note of that too. But that's the last part on that subject, though. When you and your sister were playing soccer, did you ever have like heated rivalries in the backyard at all? One-on-ones, anything like that?
No, never with her. I don't think she was at that level of competitiveness to even do that. But definitely with friends and neighbors in the backyard, in the back park. I mean, I know we used to play out there for hours until we got yelled to come in, and it's a little bit different now than the generations growing up now. I remember being outside all the time playing, whereas I think now the generations are a little bit different, in front of TV screens or iPads and phones and stuff like that. So I think just being outside and having those fun rivalries with friends and kids in the neighborhood is what kind of got you competitive.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, hey, I'm kind of from that same, like, the whole analog era. I kind of was like the last part of that generation, so the new generation here. So yeah, like me and my friends too, we were just like, oh, what do you want to go do on Friday night? Let's go to the soccer pitch and go just take shots. And I was always the goalie, and then we just have fun and do that for hours. Now, Nick, this also is another question I have to ask too, because I mean, there's some players who play the game and they only play it. They don't watch any professional soccer, things like that. And I mean, it doesn't really sound like your parents were much into soccer for your youth there. But like, did you ever like watch professional soccer growing up? And if so, like, what team were you associated with? How did you fall in love with that team? And who was your idol?
Yeah, Soccer Saturday, man. Like, that was me and my dad would sit on the couch every Saturday morning and watch it. And back then it was literally only Manchester United. Like, I remember they would always just show that was the highlight game of the weekend, right? So I'd always remember sitting down watching them, and it was funny, like, people ask, who did I look up to and who did I like? And it was Roy Keane. And that was kind of how I was as a player, right? I didn't mind doing the dirty work in midfield, kind of broke up attacks, get it, give it type of player. I wasn't, the flashy player in an advanced role up the pitch to, break lines or get on the end of a cross or anything like that. But I was the one who I actually enjoyed frustrating the opposition, breaking down their attacks or, covering, tracking back people, stuff that players didn't like to do. And I saw that right away with Roy Keane and just the mentality that he liked to play at. I mean, you look at the other players that were on that United team at the time, and there was, Scholes, Beckham, Giggs, Solskjaer, Dwight York, Stam. Those were all the players that went through there, and it was an unbelievable team to watch. So I'm still, a United fan, even though it's been a slump of a few years to support them. But whenever I'm asked, that's the team I support, just because as a kid growing up, I have the fondest memories watching them play.
Oh, and hey, when you're talking about just famous footballers or just, just famous teams, Roy Keane and Manchester United, like talk about a guy who bleeds for the badge. And
Yeah.
like talk about a guy who wears a heart on his sleeve. Like I always remember him and Patrick Vieira always just going at it in the tunnels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was a competitor, right? And, definitely not the most skillful. I mean, he was a really good player, but he wasn't known for that. He was known for leading his team and, definitely, like you said, wearing his heart on his sleeve.
You know what? Like, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I mean, for me, I'm a goalkeeper. So the reason I got into the sport was when I was 7 years old, watching the 2002 World Cup with Italy. I know they're having hard times now. But
Yeah,
I mean,
they're struggling now.
I know. But Gianluigi Buffon is the reason why I fell in love with the sport.
Nice.
I mean,
yeah,
he's just what I always try to model my game after, and how he was as a leader. And I mean, I kind of say the same thing with Roy Keane. I know, don't get me wrong, he's outspoken, but you know what? That passion is. It's kind of rare to find those type of leaders these days, especially.
Yeah, I think people lead differently now, right? And I think that hard, old school type of motivation has gone a little bit more out the window, and it's more of being a good, especially from the coaching side of it, a man manager, right? You got to get to know your players and know their why and what makes them tick, what makes them, want to show up every week and improve and get better and push their limits. I think that's where the strong leaders are now. Whereas back then it was, that hard leadership where you'd get the most out of players by, putting pressure under them, yelling at them, trying to motivate them in a vocal way, rather than an understanding type of way.
Gotcha. Well, hey, and that's just kind of shows how the game just changes over the years, right? Like I was even watching like old 1990s Manchester United against Arsenal games back in the 90s there, and I'm watching to today's game, and I'm like, I mean, it's the same game. It's the same sport, but it changed so much, right? And it's just like, and it kind of just shows how times have changed in the world of football for good and for bad. I mean, obviously there's good pros and cons, but I always like to kind of get the understanding too, because I feel like the role model and the team that you follow really helps kind of influence the player that you become in your career.
Yeah, and like you said, the games change, right? You're watching games from the 90s and 2000s and the tackles that they went into. If you had VAR review now, going back and checking a lot of those tackles, there wouldn't be many players on the pitch in some of those games. So it definitely changes with times, right?
Exactly. And you know what? And that's the thing too. Like, I mean, you see players like Maradona, George Best, like have black and blue bruises on their legs because they're just getting absolutely just tackled out there. But no, I think that's really important to highlight there too. But when talking just kind of about your youth career here, and we're going to talk just like a little bit more about it here, but was being a professional soccer player always the dream, or was it kind of something that kind of stumbled into your lap and just, hey, I'm really good at this, I want to pursue it?
Yeah, it was never a realistic dream growing up because I never had, I guess I never saw it live. So for me, it was so far-fetched or such a fantasy dream to have that, playing in a stadium in Europe, I never even imagined that was a possibility for a kid coming out of Lethbridge. And it wasn't until I went to Germany with the under 15 Canadian team. I was 14 years old at the time. We had a training camp in Duisburg in Germany, and we played against some of the youth teams over there, Mönchengladbach, Duisburg, Schalke. And I remember playing against their teams and being like, we're just as good as them. We can hold our own. We can play with them. And we went and watched a couple of second and third division games in the stadiums. And I was just remember being like, if I could get myself in this environment, I think I could have a chance to be a part of this. And I think that was the very first time when I actually realized and, knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go that direction and at least put all my chips in the pile and see if I could, make it work. I just didn't know how it was going to pan out being a kid from Lethbridge to try and do it and what that journey would look like.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of one thing I wanted to kind of talk about too, is just like, kind of having really no platform or previous like kind of pathway to follow, right? Like, I guess you have to kind of do a lot of yourself and trailblaze, right? Like, I guess that was my one question. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe in your development team there was Calgary Storm, correct?
Yeah.
And like, I just want to, I know that was very important for your development there, and just like I wanted to talk a little bit about your time there. Like, for you, I know you played as a right back, and like, can you just kind of tell me like what the transition to your game to like how you played? You talked about the U15s there, but like, what was like the really important factors that you learned from Calgary Storm to help transition you to that next level?
Yeah, for me it was, and I'll go back one step a little bit, behind that, because you look at the technology and the stuff that they have available now to scout players, and the network that they have to scout players is, I really do think if you're a good enough player, the scouting network globally will find you. Back then, I remember, going on internet sites of clubs in England and literally writing them emails about who I was, and I think I could come over and have a trial with you. I was 14 years old, trying to like go through the internet and try and get a hold of like info at whatever club it would be. And that was me at 14 years old, right? And I was lucky enough that the Calgary Storm was around as a semi-professional team, that the coach saw me in a men's tournament and said, look, he's a 14-year-old 15-year-old kid, why don't we get him up here? And sure enough, at the age of 16, I went up to and played with the Calgary Storm, which was semi-professional, and it was a step up from what I had been used to with the Alberta Major Soccer League. So I was still playing with men at that age, but I moved up to now a semi-professional, a team that was a lot of the guys, that was their second job, is playing. We played in the A League, which was, combined with North America. So we would travel and play, Whitecaps, Montreal, Seattle, Portland, Minnesota was in the league. I remember going down to El Paso and playing. Indianapolis was in the league. Yeah, like there was, and doing that at the age of 16 and 17, that was my first real taste of what it took. And what I thought was, almost that highest level in North America. Um, Looking back at it, it wasn't professional. There was a lot of like semi-professional aspects to it, whether it be like the hotel, the accommodation, the fields, everything. But for us in that moment, that was the highest level that we had. And I played as a right back because as a young player, it's very seldom that you come into a team and you play down the spine, meaning, playing as a center back or a center mid or as a striker. I think those are positions that hold a lot of responsibility, and you need a voice and leadership role with it. So, the coach at the time talked about playing in the four corners, which would be left back, right mid, left mid, where, you could use your speed, and being tenacious as I was as a young player, I would be able to get the minutes and improve, but I didn't have to have the weight of being a leader in one of those heavier roles. And that's how I just developed at a quick age, was to play those four corners.
And that I was actually listening to a prior like podcast that you done, and you talked about that four corners approach, and I was like, I never heard of that before. You always kind
Yeah,
of talked about like the spine, right? Like how
yeah,
the players usually
yeah.
develop, and I was like, huh, that's actually like a really innovative way, and I never really thought of that. And I was even going to ask you too, just because I feel like the right back position, like the full back, the wing backs, I feel like are kind of an underappreciated position, in my
Mhm.
opinion. But like, I guess just like in your opinion, though, I guess for being a right back, like what's the most important like aspect you found that's intangible for the position there?
Yeah, like I all my youth I played center midfield, and it was actually playing as a right back. I found it quite easy in a way, because the game slows down for you. The game's always in front of you, right? You never have somebody behind you. You never have to shoulder check necessarily, or a runner going in behind. You're literally, like you said, left back, right back. You're in the corner of the pitch, and if you imagine it as, sitting in the corner of the room, you get to see everything that's happening. Whereas if you're in the middle of the room, you have to constantly be pivoting, checking your shoulder, and you have to have that, vision and awareness. So the game actually slowed down for me when I played in the right back position. But not only that, I had the appreciation of what I wanted my midfielder to do, because I had played in that position. So I knew the balls, to play in the midfield. Uh, the pass appreciation that they would need, along with the communication to help them out. So I think that's, I hear it now when coaches are, fixated on players in certain positions. And I'm like, no, let them play different positions. They'll have a better appreciation for it. And I think that's why you look in the CPL right now, a lot of the under 21 minutes come from those four corner positions, right? Because they're not as demanding in the leadership type roles or affecting the game as much as the outside positions would. So that was kind of where I came from with it. But being a right back, I think it's one of those things now. Modern right backs, they get up and down that pitch like massively. You got to be starting the attack and being able to join in, as well as to recover and win your 1v1 duels. And you look at some of the better teams now that tactically are very fluid, is that right and left back position actually step into the center midfield as they move up to the pitch. So now not only are you playing wide, but you got to be comfortable receiving the ball in the middle of the pitch. So.
And you know what? That's and one of the players that really reminds me of that type of progression, how the positions really changed or progressed over time, is Philip Lahm. I always appreciated him, and I think my opinion, he's like honestly like I think the greatest ever right back in my opinion. But like you could see him play in the right back position, he'd be so comfortable in the midfield, like he could do it all.
Yeah, and you look at like Kimmich now for Bayern, very similar, right? Comfortable in the fullback position, but doesn't look out of place when they step in and play in midfield, right? They have the mentality to do both jobs.
Absolutely. And I feel like Kimmich is kind of, I know he's a great player, but I feel like he goes under the radar a bit sometimes. I feel like he's not fully as appreciated as some of the other fullbacks out there these days. But I think that was really important to highlight because again, the fullback position, I'm a goalie, so I get to understand how the important impact that fullbacks have, especially in communicating, right? And they have to bomb up and down that pitch, especially these days. And I think for those youngsters and just youth, like, that's a position that's honestly, when I played it, it was so fun. We had open space and you get that through ball in and you can either go in to have a shot or cross it in. It's like, oh, I love that feeling.
And most of the time your fullbacks are going to be the ones that have the most touches on the ball, right? They're usually the out ball to play, or they're the ones, like you said, driving into space. So you look at the stats after a game, your right back, your left back are usually the ones that have the highest pass percentage or touches on the ball.
There you go. The stats don't lie, right? And I mean, for young players too, right? It helps to also develop that game, right? More touches on the ball, more of the whole thing helps us develop their game in general. So
massively. Yeah.
Now a little side note though, Nick. I mean, I've heard back in the day that like when Messi was trying to get his name out there to teams, he had his own like VHS tapes that he was sending out to like Barcelona and all those teams like that. I mean, you're looking for emails, looking for websites back in the day, but did you ever make your own highlight tape?
Never. I never made my own highlight tape. I think what happened, before that is when I went from Calgary Storm, the coach at the time was Thomas Niendorf, and he's from German background, lived in Calgary, but was the one who kind of helped facilitate Owen Hargreaves to go over to Bayern Munich. Kevin McKenna went to Cottbus at the time. I think Tamin Saliwa, another Albertan, Lars Hirschfeld. There was a few of them that he kind of helped facilitate go over to Germany. He was the one that initially opened that door for me to, go over to Germany and go on trial. And he had organized a tryout, a 1-week trial with Bayern Munich when I was 18. So that was my initial step across sea. So I went from Calgary Storm, playing at Foothills Athletic Park in front of 800 people, to going over to Bayern Munich and going on trial. So I was definitely undereducated in who Bayern Munich was, in the sense of, the history that they had. The only thing I knew about Bayern Munich was that they lost to Manchester United in the Champions League final that year, that I actually I skipped school to watch it, because that was, one of the most amazing games and memories that I have of, Man United. But that's all I knew about them. I didn't know the history of the club. I didn't know, what the training grounds looked like. And when I went over there, it probably helped being so naive, because when I look back on it, the opportunity that I had, I should have been so nervous, but I was naive in it. I just wanted to go play and try out. And I had a 1 week trial with them. I started with the under 19 team, trained with them for 3 days, trained with the reserve team for 3 days. And then they gave me the opportunity to train once with the first team. And now the first team, most of the players were away on international break, but there was still a few players there in the training. And we trained with like Giovanni Elber at the time, or Thomas Linka was there, I remember. And these guys were unbelievable. Giovanni Elber was, a household name in Brazil and for Bayern Munich. So to have that opportunity was crazy when I look back on it, and the opportunity with it. And things didn't work out with Bayern Munich, which, was completely fine. But what they said was, you're a good player. For that age, you're a good player. But, Bayern Munich doesn't sign good players. We sign great players that are ready to take the next step in the next couple of years. And because I did well with the trial, they said, we're going to put your name forward with 1860 Munich, who's literally across the street and in the same league. 1860 Munich played in the first Bundesliga at that time, and they were actually the ones who helped arrange the trial with 1860 Munich. And I went across and had a 3-day trial with them, and they offered me a contract. And that's kind of how I first got my foot in the doors in Germany.
That's great. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that Bayern was able to put your name over, but for a rival, for them to do that, that's
Yeah.
I would never think that.
I think for them, it was all about the youth players and finding a place to play, right? And, I was at no threat to Bayern Munich. So they kind of saw, okay, this kid's coming from Canada. He's obviously talented, not at the level that we're interested in, but let's, maybe place him somewhere where he can develop. And I think, it may come as a shock to Canadians to think that, because in Canada, you would never do that with a rivalry. But for Bayern Munich, they were so far ahead of that I was a nobody to them, right? So to be able to do that, it wasn't going to come bite them in the butt later on in life, right? It was fine. So yeah, I went to 1860, and the first team was in the Bundesliga at the time. And that first season, they got relegated from the Bundesliga. So I played with the under 19 team. That's where they kind of placed me, is in the U19 team. But that season, the Bundesliga team got relegated to the second Bundesliga team, or second Bundesliga. And it actually worked out into my favor, because it helped me progress quicker to get into the first team, because a lot of the players left to go play for other first Bundesliga clubs, which opened a lot of roster spots and movements in between the teams.
Well, hey, sometimes if opportunity knocks, right, and sometimes a lot of players that make it, to get that opportunity, they got to seize it, right? And
Yeah.
I think that kind of really speaks to, even though they got relegated, it opened up an opportunity for yourself to help establish yourself in that squad. And I guess I always just kind of want to ask this too, because I've had other Alberta alumni on the podcast here too. Bim Pebble, I don't know if you remember him as well, but I've had Bim on the podcast. He's smashing it over there in England right now. Hopefully, can be potentially be a part of the World Cup squad. You never know.
Yeah.
But I was asking him just about like the differences. Like, I mean, obviously he's more recent from Canada soccer to Germany football over there, but like. When you went over there, I know you said you kind of had some experience in the under, the U15s and stuff like that. But when you were going on trial and then actually signing with 1860 Munich, like what was like the biggest difference from like Canadian soccer to like Germany soccer? Like what was the biggest learning curve for you?
I think for me, it was just the consistency in the speed and the level, right? Like every day the level was at a high paced, high intensity. There was a certain drive and intention to the training sessions, where what I found over in Canada was, you'd get it once in a while, right? You get some sessions that were okay, they were fun. Every once in a while you get a really intense session, or, players competing for the starting spot on the weekend every once in a while. But in Germany, that just seemed consistent Monday through Friday. It's like you needed to perform every day, or else there was somebody there that wanted your spot. And I found Germany to be very competitive within that team. And I think Germany has a very big bonus structure in how they do their payments, salary based, right? Everybody has their salary, but their bonus structure is actually very high. So you'd get a bonus if you were in the starting 11. You'd get a bonus if the team won. You'd get a bonus if you were a sub and you came on for minutes. And I think what that created was so much competition for places, because they knew, especially in the third and the second Bundesliga, you could double your salary if you came on and you were winning. And I think that's what drove the competition, and the flip side of that is that team unity sometimes wasn't there, because you'd be competing with each other so much during the week that even sometimes come the weekend, I was exhausted because I had to compete Monday to Friday. I knew every training session. I couldn't take my foot off the gas if I wanted to play on the weekend. And come the weekend, you were like, oh, now I'm supposed to actually showcase myself. So I found it hard at times to do it. And it was exhausting. It's a grind over there to do it. And I think that's why, you have such good quality football over there, is because these players that can do it week in and week out, yeah, they rise to the top.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest things, especially too, about the just in the whole profession of football. Like I was actually talking with Matt Silva recently, and he was getting his first pro contract over there in Asia, and he was saying when he was doing doing practices as a youngster there with some of the Indonesian players in his team, and his team would lose in like a friendly in a practice, and the players would actually get upset with each other, saying, "You're trying to take food out of my mouth."
Yeah.
Like this is my livelihood. I got a family to feed. And it's like one of those things where it's always that constant competition, because again, you don't know, like if basically any other day could change in the world of football. I'm sure you know that, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these football players too, like whether it be starters, reserve players, like squad depth players, like you're fighting for your job a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, I tell a really cool story to a lot of the youth teams when I go to. When I went on my 3-day trial at 1860 Munich, there was a player from South Africa that was on trial at the same time with me. The second day on trial, he came in, 10 minutes late to the locker room. We had to be in at 9:00. He came in 10 after 9. We didn't have to be out to training until 10, but he was late in that sense. And obviously you can imagine being late over in Germany, how punctual they are over there, and how, good they are with their time. That the coach just said, yeah, you don't need to train today. It's all right. We're going to cut your trial short. Thanks for coming out anyways. And, the player was like, well, what do you mean, coach? Like, I was only 10 minutes late, dude, and it wasn't my fault. And the coach just said, look, you're on trial. If you're late on trial, what does that mean when, if you actually make the team? Are you going to be reliable? Are you going to be trustworthy? Are you going to be, when you're on the field with your teammates, are they going to be able to trust you? What kind of image is that? And if you can't make sure that you're on time or early on your trial, you don't have a spot for us. And that was like, that hit when I was like, oh geez, like this is serious over there. And it was like the punctuality and everything with it was one of the biggest focuses, in the youth teams. Like you had to be on time, you had to be punctual, you had to look the part, you had to help with equipment. It was ingrained in you in the youth teams.
And I think that's also very important to note as well, because I coach as well. So I coach youth soccer, not obviously at that level, but like, sometimes like, especially with some of the youth players, they treat some of these rules like they're lackadaisical, right? And they show up late to training and they don't take it as seriously. And the big thing is like, at least when I was playing soccer growing up here, it's all about discipline, right? And you're looking at Germany, like one of the top echelons of like of soccer in the world, and that standard that they hold for their players, right? And I think that's really something that you have to like adhere to, right? With that discipline. Like, I'm sure, unfortunately for that kid that had his trial cut short because of being late, I'm sure that was a great life lesson for him, right? I don't know what he went on to do or play professionally after, but you know what? That's what you learn from other people's mistakes in your case, like you did there. But I think it's a really good lesson to really highlight to the youth players going up now, because again, the attention to details there can really help set you apart from the rest.
Yeah, like and even coming on time to meetings, right? The Germans kept saying like you have to be 5 minutes early for a meeting. They would question players who would come down right on time because they would be like, why would you leave yourself at risk? You know, if the elevator didn't come on time, or if you had to take the stairs, or if you forgot something, you know, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just come down 5 minutes earlier and prepare yourself for the meeting? Because their mindset was if you come down right on time, you sit down, you're now not focused. You still need to like take those couple of minutes to get, I guess, focused or sit down and be able to absorb now what the meeting's about. And yeah, they just had that way about them that was very detail oriented and very specific in the way that they went about stuff. But again, you can see why they're top of the world in what they do.
Exactly. And you know what? I think that's something that we can take a lot of good lessons from there, and how, like, especially with the Canadian program,
Mm-hmm.
how it continues to develop here too. But you know, the one before we kind of touch into, like, I really want to talk about like your first professional debut for 1860. But the one quick little side note I just want to take us on here for a second is, I mean, you're moving from, Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. You're going to across over the pond to Germany. I mean, um,
Mm-hmm.
moving to a whole different country, different language. I mean, that's obviously like, kind of the unspoken things about professional athletes, right? Settling in to a new country
Yeah.
could be a lot hard for professional players. I just wanted to ask you, like, I mean, for yourself at a young age there too. I mean, like, how was your support system out there? Like, how did you kind of get through like that time getting homesick? Like, was there anything kind of about like just the country itself to help make you kind of just make you feel more comfortable there? Like, I'm just really kind of interested to hear your
Yeah,
insight on that.
it was very tough. Like I won't lie, there were definitely moments where you know I would be in my at the time my first year was like almost like a sports dorm kind of area that they had the players, but there were times where I would be like questioning why am I trying to go through all this? Like it's hard, I got to be resilient, I got to fight it. And I'm like I left a very good childhood back home. Like I had some great friends, playing soccer. My family was great. My life at home was great. Why leave it for that? And just every once in a while with the youth teams, I'd have such cool experiences, and see, if you keep plugging away, the the sacrifices and what you can get at the end of it far outweigh those bad days. And it was actually one of the youth directors who told me, like, when you're sad, don't call home. And I was like, what do you mean don't? Like, that's my support cast. Like, what do you mean don't call home, don't call my parents? He goes, yeah, because you'll always associate home when you're sad, and that'll be what your parents hear and feel from you as well. He said, make sure you call home when you have good days. And I just, I thought that was actually really powerful, because it was the good days that I wanted to then tell my parents about. It wasn't the I'm homesick, I want to come home. It was like, no, we had a game on the weekend, I did really well, we scored, we won, the coach said this. And it kind of changed the mentality of being homesick. I shared with my parents when I was doing well, and they obviously knew I was settled in and doing well over there as well. But I would say, like, it was definitely different back then than it is now. There was no FaceTime. There was no, Instagram to message parents and friends and just stay connected. Like I literally had to either go to an internet cafe or go down to the corner and get an international calling card to get a hold of my parents, right? So and maybe that helped in a way, because I wasn't connected to them all the time. I wasn't connected to my friends. I wasn't seeing what I was missing out back home. I was able to just concentrate on my next steps in Germany. And there was also like a few foreigners that were around there, so we were all in the same boat with it. But one thing that I'll say about Germany, that is, they want you to learn the culture and the language as quickly as possible. So when I first went over there, I had 4 hours of German lessons every morning. So because I was with the under 19 team, the kids were still in school in the morning. So when they went to school, I went to language school. So I learned 4 hours of German every morning for the first 6 months to at least get the foundation and the basics, because the coach wouldn't speak English. And a lot of the players, with that competitive environment, didn't necessarily want to reach out and help you. So you had to get, the things going that way and learn and get your equity within the team by showing that you actually wanted to be a part of the culture and learn the language.
And I think that's something that you can really kind of like. I've been to Germany too, and I've been able to kind of see just like how the culture is. And I mean, I obviously didn't live there, so I can't really say for sure. But like, I mean, yeah, like when you terms of like trying to adapt, like yeah, learning the culture and being able to speak the language probably help out a lot in terms of like just like
Oh,
learning curves and just be able communication with coaches just in general. That
yeah.
probably helped out tenfold.
Yeah. And I remember there'd be times where, I would find out that, a lot of the guys on the team would go out for dinner and I wasn't invited. And it was stuff like that that you had to deal with, being a foreigner or being an outsider in the beginning. And it was like, okay, how do I earn their respect? And it wasn't through, stuff outside of the field. It was on the field. And once you showed that you were a valuable player in their team and you could help them out, that's how you got the respect. And then that's how everything started to click off the field. You start to feel part of the group. You started to get invited to, barbecues or dinners or movies or things outside of it, is because they finally, saw that you were an asset to the team and you were valuable to them.
Yeah, and you were accepted, and I think
Yeah.
that speaks to it. And I was curious about this too, because I mean, for your, I'm assuming for yourself, like I mean, a Canadian going across the pond, playing in professional football in Germany. I'm assuming there probably wasn't a lot of Canadians playing professional football there in Europe and Germany at that time.
No, I mean, um, other than a couple of the older players that were playing, the one cool story would be that Owen Hargreaves, while he was at Bayern Munich, I was probably there. Probably would have been my fourth, fifth month there, so still getting settled in. And the youth director came up to me and he said, Owen Hargreaves actually got a hold of us. He's going to come pick you up after training and wants to, take you out for dinner type of thing. And Owen Hargreaves from Bayern Munich comes over to 1860 Munich, who are a bit rivals, and picks me up after training one day, right? And everybody's kind of looking like, what's this guy doing picking up, one of the youth players, and picks me up and takes me to the driving range, and we just shoot the shit for a little bit. It was awesome because he was, grew up in Calgary, and I think for him as well, it was nice to connect to a Canadian. But he kept asking me, like, oh, do you have plans tonight, or what are you doing? And I just kept saying like, oh, and I don't have any plans here. I don't have plans for dinner. I don't have friends here right now. And he goes, oh, okay, well, come back to my place. We can hang out for a little bit. And then, same thing. You want to go for dinner? Sure. And he actually took me to one. He goes, oh, one of the guys on the team's having a barbecue. We can go there. And so he took me to one of the players' houses, and it was him and two of the players from Bayern Munich. They were having a barbecue, and I didn't know who the players were, and so I'm just there having a conversation, broken English, and he ends up driving me home, Owen Hargreaves, and he goes, "Do you know who that was?" I said, "No." He goes, "That was, Mehmet Scholl."
Oh,
And
really?
at the time, I'm like, "Oh, okay, who's Mehmet Scholl?" And he kind of laughed and he goes, "He's the Luis Figo, pretty much, of Germany." And it wasn't until like I started watching, Bayern Munich play while I was there, and then you'd see like big advertisements of this guy. But yeah, went out and had dinner with Mehmet Scholl, and the other one was Marcus Fusner, who ended up having a really good career as well. But like that was really cool looking back, and I always try and pay it forward now because that experience with Owen Hargreaves is something that I tell. It's a story, right? So now when any youth players or new players come in, I try and make them feel at home, whether it be, take them out for dinner or show them around in the city, and just try and get them adapted as quickly as possible, because I know how hard it can be at times to go, not only to a new city but a new culture by yourself and try and get settled. And I'm, a very strong believer that you perform at your best when you're comfortable, right? So
Yeah, and I mean that's what an amazing story. And
yes.
I mean I don't know them obviously, and I mean they probably found it like pretty refreshing. They're like, oh, this guy doesn't, like wasn't starstruck or anything like that. They just treated him like
Yeah,
any
well, I
normal
just got
person.
on with it, and they probably, like, he's not asking all these questions about, like, what it's like to play in the Champions League, or for Germany, I was just, okay, what's for dinner? What are we having? Oh, cool. What do you guys do in your spare time? Type of thing. So yeah, I mean, probably should, it's probably something that they don't remember anymore, but it's definitely lived with me throughout the years.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss to ask this question though, Nick. Like, was there any like kind of like discourse at all for for that you faced at all when going over to Germany, like about being Canadian, playing soccer at all? Because I've heard stories about like, about certain teams not taking players because they're from Canada. Like, oh, what does Canada know about soccer?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I don't think it was ever, they wouldn't, like, certain players wouldn't take you because you were from Canada. Where I found the most tension or resistance was when I got invited to go with the national teams. It was always like, why would you go play for Canada? Like, why are you going to go play, against Jamaica, against Costa Rica? The Germans just viewed it as like almost vacation destinations. Like, oh, we only go to Jamaica on vacation, or we'd only go to Cuba on vacation. And I'm like, that's Canada's CONCACAF qualifying is in those countries, and that's where I got the most resistance from a lot of the teams, and a lot of the conversations were, we obviously can't hold you back from going with your national team, but just know if you go, you're going to lose your spot. And then once you come back, you got to earn it again. So it was literally that on a constant of, okay, if I'm going to go represent Canada, when I come back, I know I'm going to sit on the bench for 1 or 2 games. Or if I get lucky, somebody's injured and then I can play. But it was a constant with it. Like, I remember in the summer, I got invited to go to the Gold Cup. I just moved to FSV Frankfurt, and they're in the second Bundesliga. And the coach goes, well, you're not going to go to the Gold Cup, are you? I said, well, it's a big tournament for us. Like, why wouldn't I go? And he goes, well, if you don't do a full preseason with us, then I can't really guarantee you minutes for the season. And I was like, well, like, what do you mean? I'm going to play for my country. They're like, yeah, but it's Canada. Right. And that was back then. That was 2016 and before. Like, would that be in 2005 to 2016, where Canada was probably ranked between 60 and 80. And so that was their argument. It's like, well, you guys aren't even going to qualify for a World Cup. You guys aren't even going to do that. Whereas I think the conversations now are completely different. All the international players who play, when they go for Canada, they're like, oh, you guys are going to your second World Cup. You guys are hosting. You're part of it. I think there's a lot more respect now for Canada, especially you look at the players and the depth that we have in our squad and at what level they're playing at. We have literally a starting lineup of players who are playing in first divisions across the world. So there's a lot more respect than 10 years ago when we had starting players who were unattached. So I think the growth that's come with the national team has definitely helped that across the world.
And then also too, to speak with that as well, and I mean, like with Canadian Premier League around, right? Like, I mean, it's been around for a certain amount of years now, but like you're starting to see talent, like starting to get opportunities abroad. Like, I mean, we just talked about Mateo DeBrien, Beam Pebble. And you're seeing a lot of these guys who are getting chances here domestically that may have not had these opportunities before, right? And you're starting to see a lot more talent and depth break it in Europe. Like, I mean, for me, I'm a Serie A lover. Like, I love Italian football, even though it's going through dark ages right now. But I mean, seeing Ismail Kone doing bits with Sassuolo. I mean,
very good. Yeah.
My favorite team, Juventus. Jonathan Davis had an inconsistent season, but he is still putting, done some pretty good jobs there for Juventus
but even,
as well.
Even the fact that he's there.
Yeah.
Right. He's there. He's starting. Same with Kone. Right. We have the same success stories with Cavalry. You look at, like a Joel Waterman, who came through from a U Sports into our team and then moved on to Montreal and now Chicago. Without the CPL, a Dominic Zator, who's playing over in Poland and got capped with Canada last year, that pathway may not have existed for those players, right? Victor Laturi, same thing. There's a lot of these players who are now being able to have the spotlight given to them or the opportunities to, continuously showcase themselves to get a bigger move and growth. And I think a lot of Canadian players actually develop a little later as well. So you may not get the 16, 17-year-olds that you get in Europe because of that, youth infrastructure that they have over there. Our players may develop a little bit later, but we definitely have the talent, and like you said, with the CPL now, we have a place to showcase it.
Absolutely. I mean, I guarantee you, we could probably sit here and talk for hours about just like
Yeah.
diverging talent and just how they've gone across as well, and even MLS, even Europe and stuff like that. It's honestly something truly exciting to see. Like, I mean, coming as a fan just of the CPL in general. I mean, I was a Valor supporter. Unfortunately, what happened. I'm not. I wish.
Yeah, but you should be proud of that because it's your city, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of the cities have or had a CPL team. And I think that's where we got to get to, is that there's passionate fans in each city, and it doesn't matter, what necessarily quality of your team is. If they're in your city, as a soccer supporter, you should be out there supporting them.
100%, and that's what I tried to do when they were here, go to the games. And I mean, I'm good friends with Raph O'Heen. I've also Tyson Farrago.
Yeah.
And I've seen Raph's now moved over to Ireland. He's doing his thing in Ireland there now. And you know what? I think it's one of those things too that like you kind of said before, you couldn't go see a professional soccer team growing up. So for me, I was like I didn't have that growing up here either. That's why when I was able finally to go see it live, I was like, wow, like this is something I can't take for granted. And you know what? I think that's something that's truly special. Honestly, I'm happy it's here, but this should have been here like decades ago, in my opinion. But it's just what a unbelievable development for the country, and just how far the game's gone, and just why I really wanted to kind of talk about like that experience, just with that perception of Canada, right? Like, look how in just like that decade or so, right? Like, kind of seen as like, oh, Gold Cup, why would you go play for Canada? You're wasting your time. And now it's like, okay, Canada's starting to actually like get some reputation here and build credibility. And there's even talks, I'm not trying to jinx it, but us getting out of the group stage or leading top of the group and going to the knockouts.
Well, even that's amazing, right? That now people are starting to see that what does success look like for Canada at the World Cup, and that's not even the end of the conversation. Just being in the World Cup, it's success now looks like getting out of the group stage or being first out of the group stage, right? Those are the conversations now, and I love it because any kids under the age of 14, all they know is that Canada qualifies for World Cups. That's all they'll know right now. Whereas anybody 16 and older, we're like, man, we've been waiting years for this to happen, right? This is, a long time in the making. And so I just find that amazing. Like these younger generations now is like, Canada qualifies for World Cup. That's where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what you're talking about, that inspiration, right? Because again, this is going to inspire the next generation coming through. And again, I'm not trying to pull it back to Italy, but then there's now there's the headlines. There's a whole youth generation of Italians now that haven't seen Italy at a World Cup. Right now, how that impacts it too. But honestly, just truly exciting to see how the game is going to grow there. And while we're on that topic, I mean, you've represented our country proudly for like 50 appearances, right? For Canada. Just looking at that back, I mean, when you talk about just like about the Gold Cup and things like that, like, when you look back at your career there, like what was like the most memorable moment for you for when representing your country?
Yeah, I think for me it was there was two occasions that obviously stick with me, and it was near the end of my career, and one of it was captaining Canada against Scotland. Got the opportunity to wear the armband when we played them and tied them 1-1, and the other one was in Vancouver playing against El Salvador and scoring my only goal for Canada. But it was special because it was in front of my family. They were able to come out and watch the game. So those two moments for me, very special. And like you said, proud is, I think, an understatement of representing Canada. All the guys that I played with in that generation knew every trip that we went on was something special. And, we talk about it now is, the bond that we had in that group, because we were all, like you said, trailblazers going through those tough times of representing the country, but also trying to make things work on the club side of it. So proud, definitely an understatement, and it's good to see so many of those guys still in and involved with soccer.
Well, and you're talking just about like some of your teammates, and I mean, some of my favorites growing up, looking up to like players like you. Like, I mean, I was looking to you, Dwayne D. Rosario. Loved watching him play. Patrice Bernier, always loved seeing him play. Jonathan de Guzman. And honestly, like one of my favorite FIFA players was Junior Hoylett as well. I love watching Junior Hoylett.
And he's still there. He may be involved with the World Cup squad, right? I think he he may break into it, because there's definitely a spot for him there as being one of those super subs to come on and break down teams that have a low block, and he's got that experience to help.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm excited to see. I mean, he's playing for Swindon Town now in League Two, but like he's still doing
Mm-hmm.
really good at that level, and
Mm-hmm.
especially how long he's been in the game. I'm excited to see him still get maybe one last World Cup here for Canada.
We'll see, right?
You know, I know, Nick, we're coming up here a little bit on time, and I know we could talk about this for your career for hours, and you know, I kind of just wanted to ask you just like a little bit, just a couple more questions about this Germany, and then time your management, and then let's wrap it up with some fun questions if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so my fun questions here for Germany though. So I mean,
Okay.
you're talking about atmosphere though. Like, I mean, you're talking about passionate fans. Like, I mean, you're going out, you're playing in front of like these passionate supporters there, especially the 1860 Munich crowd. And I mean, you know, with that side, I mean, it's a rival with Bayern Munich, obviously the giant of Germany there. But I mean, for a lot, 1860 is like the working man's team, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Munich. So you got a lot of passionate fans. You might even have ultras out there, which they kind of refer them to as. But when you're making your first appearance though and stepping in front of that crowd, like, what's your memories of that, and what feelings are you having during that moment?
Yeah, it was actually a cup game that I got involved with, and it was against Eintracht Frankfurt in I think it was the quarterfinal of the DFB Pokal. And again, probably a bit naive into what that meant for the fans, but we shared a stadium with Bayern Munich, and it was the new stadium, it was the Allianz Arena. So my first real professional debut was in the Allianz Arena, where Bayern Munich played. That was our home stadium for the years that I was with 1860 Munich. But one of the biggest thing I remember is the night before the game. You know, we stayed in a hotel for home games as well, and my roommate kind of goes, "So, what are you going to do with the money if we win?" And I kind of look at him and I said, "What do you mean the money if we win?" And he goes, "Yeah, you know, it's the quarterfinal of the DFB Pokal. Like each player gets 10,000 euros if we win." And I kind of look at him. I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like what? 10,000? You know?" And I'm 21, just got brought up to the first team, and I'm like, "Geez." So I'm laying there in bed. Now I can't even go to sleep because I'm thinking, "Oh, if we win, what am I going to do with this? And wouldn't that be cool? And that's a 10,000 euro bonus. Oh, geez, right?" And then get to play the game against Frankfurt. We lost, I think it was 2-1 or 2-0 against them, but it was such a cool experience. Eintracht Frankfurt there in the Bundesliga at the time, but that was my first like debut and first game with them. So very cool experience.
Was that one of those moments where you're like, I made it type thing?
No, you know what? I never really had that moment of I made it, because I think I always had to prove myself. Right? I always felt like I needed to prove myself to stay there. I needed to be better, or, you know, better than the Germans. So why would they take a Canadian that was equal to? Right? So I always felt like I needed to prove myself. I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, "Oh, I made it." No, I think it was one of those where you had to keep your foot on the gas the whole time, or else you wouldn't make it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess it's also maybe a little spin-off question of this though. I mean, you hear like kind of like in the NFL or in NHL, they said like, "Oh, welcome to the league, kid," type of thing like that. Did you ever have any of those type of moments when you in your career? That you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, my man was the one who scored off a corner kick. And it was probably one of those where, you know, you think you're marking somebody and he's got such good double movement that you're like, you think you have him, then all of a sudden he rises up before you, and before you know it, it's in the back of the net, and you're like, this is a different level, right? And probably that was, you know, with the debut, that moment of like, okay, if I want to stay here, I gotta be switched on all the time. Type of thing. So it was just one of those, there's layers to it, right? There was layers of being in the reserve team was good, okay, layers in the training session, but to perform at a game, like there was no room for mistake.
Yeah, the margins are just so thin, right?
Yeah.
And I guess my second last question about your time here in Germany though was like, was there any player that like you played against, like it was to be world-class players that like you could just tell like we're just on another level?
We actually had a very good youth team at 1860 Munich, And I think it was just the abundance of talent that came through the youth team that I saw literally week in and week out. Whether it was like Sven and Lars Bender were a part of that team that went on to play with the German national team, Leverkusen, um, Dortmund. They had really good careers. And then there was Baumgartlinger, who played for Austria, moved on. Daniel Bayer, Matthias Lehmann, they both went to play for Germany. Benny Laut. Marcel Schaefer had a really good career with Wolfsburg. He's now the sporting director of Red Bull Leipzig. These were all these players in the youth team that I trained with week in and week out, and they ended up going on to have really good careers in the Bundesliga. So I think for me, that was just like the standard of coming through the youth team to the reserve team, and all of us keep pushing each other to get better. But as far as anybody who, at the time was outstanding, I think for me, probably Benny Laut at 1860 Munich was one of the players where I was like, he made things just look easy, right? He was an attacker, and he just made it look effortless. There was no fight for the ball, and there was nothing. The timing of his runs and the way he could kind of manipulate play to be on the end of crosses and finishing made the game look really easy. And I think he was one where when I look back, I was like, yeah, he's one that was above the level for me.
And yeah, by the way, you just listed off like a bunch of world-class players, by the way, like just outstanding players.
And that was the amazing thing of coming through our youth team with it, right? And 1860 Munich was known for having a very good youth program with it and integrating properly into the first team. So I think, to be able to be at 1860 Munich for 6 years before I moved on definitely helped with the development to stay so long in Germany.
Absolutely. And I mean, and just not to speak of that talent, but I mean, you spent like, a long time there in Germany there, like over a decade in the time there. And I mean, we're going to talk about your transition to the CPL quickly, but when looking back at your career, like what's been like your personal favorite moment? Like you can look back at and be like, oh, like this is like one of my favorite moments when I look back at like fond memory.
I think just the resilience and growth that I had going through it, right? To get through those tough times. And, I'm a true believer, like the tougher the times, the more you can enjoy the rewards at the end of it. And, even though there weren't any real clear rewards in the sense of getting promoted or winning cups, to walk out in the Allianz Arena in front of 60,000 people, to play in some of those big games, to have my parents fly over and watch, to stay over there for 12 years, to make some of the connections I did. When I look back on it, for me, that's the enjoyment of it, and the stories that I can, tell my kids, or the experiences that I can share with the players now coming through. That's where I find the enjoyment with it.
Well, and you know what? You get to live a dream that many want and aspire, and you get to live that dream that, I would love to have that again. Like you said, playing Allianz Arena in front of 60,000 supporters. Like, I mean, you can't go much better than that.
Yeah, there's some definitely cool experiences, and then you top that with the national team and some of the teams that we played against in stadiums, and being able to travel the world to do something you love. We visited some unbelievable places. To play against Argentina is, we have a new staff member at the Cavalry, and he's Argentinian, and he actually brings it up, and he goes, man, like, how was it? Like, and at the time I was just in it, and he's like, oh, who did you swap jerseys with? And I was like, you know what? I was so upset that we lost. I didn't swap jerseys. And that's how much of a competitor I was. I wasn't one who, looked to swap jerseys and to see who. I wanted to win, and I was upset if we didn't. So I wasn't going to go chase somebody down and try and swap a jersey. But I remember, like, that Argentina team that we played against, Diego Maradona was the coach. Messi sat on the bench. Tevez was there. Di Maria played. Verón. Like, there were some unbelievable players there, and playing in River Plate Stadium, sold out capacity. like those are moments that are, nobody's going to take those away from you. Those are cool stories, right? I won't tell people that we lost 5-0, but I'll let them know everything else.
Exactly. They don't need to know that part. You just say
They
you say you
don't need
played
to know
together.
that part. They don't need to know that.
And this is one little side note here. Are you a big guy on like keeping some of your memorabilia and things like that? Do you have anything from the time?
Yeah, I got a lot of my old jerseys.
Okay.
So a lot of my old stuff I'll keep. I got a few big bins of the stuff that I keep. I got, a couple bins of some of the jerseys that I exchanged. But like I said, I wasn't ever, oh man, we're playing against James Rodriguez or, James Rodriguez. I need to go get his jersey. I'll chase him down after a game. I was never like that. Mm-hmm. So if there was ever a jersey swap or something, it was usually the guy I was marking. And if we had a good battle, it'd be like, yeah, hey, awesome, swap jerseys, and off you go. Or in the tunnel afterwards, grab one. But it was never something that I had in mind after a game.
Good to know, but also another important piece. Did you keep the game ball from when the first goalie scored for Canada?
No.
What?
Actually, I did.
Did?
That's a lie. I did. Yeah, I didn't keep it afterwards, but they came in the hotel and I got the ball afterwards. So
okay.
Yeah, I do have that. That's true.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, that's good to know. That's good to know. So you know what I like, I know we could be here for hours talking about your career just in general, Germany, but you know what, I also really want to put a good importance and highlight here on the CPL and coming back home to Canada. I mean, you kind of referenced it, talking about your time in the national team, like getting able to play in front of friends and family. What prompted, like, I guess at that time, I guess you spent a good amount of time in Germany. Like what kind of prompted to decide, okay, now's the time I'm going to move back home and play?
Yeah, there was a moment when I was getting closer to 30 and I just felt, I couldn't see myself necessarily living in Germany after my career. I wanted to settle down, wanted to have a family at some point. And it was one Christmas break. I came home and ended up meeting my wife, who's from Lethbridge. And I met her just on Christmas break when I was home. And we did a long distance relationship for a while. She came over. I was in Cottbus, and that was at the end of my time in Germany. She came over to Cottbus and did month on, month off because she was working back in Lethbridge. And we got to a point where we were like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And I was like, you know what? To be honest, I'm ready to come home. I want to start building the next steps in my life and my career. The only team that was close to home was Edmonton in the NASL. And, she had gone to U of A. She had family in Edmonton. And so we looked at the possibility of doing that, and it worked out. I moved back to Edmonton in the NASL. Unfortunately, it was only 2 seasons because the team folded in Edmonton. But it actually set up a really cool full circle moment for me to go back to Calgary and help start Cavalry FC, which is part of the Canadian Premier League. And that was, kind of, the initiative to get me to go back to Calgary was, why don't you come be a part of this, and make it a full circle career. And so I heard, kind of the talks that were happening through the CPL, what they wanted to do across Canada. And I ended up being the first signing of not only Cavalry, but of the CPL, and to be a part of that and help build it. And for me, the whole goal and the idea was to help build something that I never had growing up, and to be able to do it on my terms and play out my career in Calgary again in front of friends and family. I thought, man, this is such a cool way. Especially, I was realistic enough with myself to know I wasn't going to make any further steps in my career. I wasn't going to try and make it to the MLS. I wasn't going to try and make it, back into a higher team over in Germany. At this point, it was about enjoying it and helping build something.
And I think that's something that you also can look at. Like, I mean, you have that perspective from playing in it and also now coaching in it. I mean, it's developed quite a long way now. Like, I mean, we're in 2026 now, so a good 7 years. I think you also played 3 seasons there for Cavalry, and just what an absolute project that the team has been, and like how successful. Like, it's been a great program, and I think that's something that really speaks to just like, you're not only your involvement in it, but just like the community there in St. Calgary and Alberta soccer in general. Like, I think
Yeah,
it's great to see.
it's nice to see, and it's even better to see it done the right way. From the top down, our ownership group is great in supporting it and seeing the vision and helping us see it through. But then you look at the other layers to it, the coaching staff, the staff members that used to be players in the front office, from Mason Trafford, Tofa Fakunli in the front office, and then myself, Jay Wielden, on the coaching staff. They're helping integrate these players into roles, and I think the biggest thing is we've all bled and sweat for the badge, and now we're working for it. And I think that has such a deeper meaning to it, because we want to see it succeed at such a higher level than anybody else probably would just coming in to do the job. And I think that's where you're going to get the most out of people. Is it's a passion project. We want it to succeed so bad, because we want soccer to succeed in this country. And I think that's where it's growing. And when you get the right people behind it, pushing it the right way, magical things happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, that kind of speaks volumes to how the team has progressed on the field, especially with their time on playing and so the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But you retired back there, in 2021, 2022. But like, was coaching always in your mind to do, or is that something like how that'll come about?
Yeah. So when I was over in Germany, my last couple of years, so when I was 27, 28 in Germany, I was like, I could see myself started to, look at the opportunities after soccer. And what did it mean after soccer? My dad was actually really big with it. He goes, okay, make sure you're prepared after soccer, that transition afterwards. You're not going to play forever. And you didn't play at a high enough level, first Bundesliga, stuff like that, where, jobs are going to be given to you. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have your certification. So when I was over in Germany, I made sure I got my UEFA B coaching license before I left. So I made sure I at least had a coaching certificate with me, so it could make the transition a little easier. And that was kind of what helped open the door. The last year with the Cavalry, Martin Nash left to take a head coaching job out of York. And we had the conversations of, do you want to stay and play another year, or do you want to transition and be on the coaching side of it and start that coaching journey? And not gonna lie, it was a tough conversation, because part of me is like, I still want to play. Like, I love the game so much, I still want to play. And I truly felt like I still had the legs to play. But on the other side of it was, what are you playing for? Are you playing just for yourself? I now have a family. I have 2 kids. What does the future look like? What do you want to do? And I wanted to get into coaching at some point, so that was the right step to get into it at that point. And full credit to Tommy Wielden, who made things, and I made that transition actually really easy for me. And it was easier because I'd been in the team. I knew the infrastructure of the club, and our playing model and style of the club. So for me to then transfer over and be a coach, I already had the leadership qualities of captaining the team, and had the Asian experience I had gotten from overseas, that I could help bring that to the players just from a coaching side, though.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very key, experience that you have to help make sure transition you to be a coach you are today. Because I mean, obviously you're a very successful coach, and actually Daryl Fordyce I had a conversation with him too, and I got kind of the same kind of feedback about his experiences too. And it's always kind of really interesting to see just how a player coach and how that transitions to the coaching. And kind of speaking about like just your coaching now, like what's been the most fulfilling part about coaching Cavalry?
I think it's the effect you can have on a larger group, right? I enjoyed playing, and when you are a captain or a leader in a group, you can affect certain players around you to a certain extent, right? You still have to take care of your own business, and you still have to make sure that the performance that you're giving is up to standard on the field. Whereas when you're a coach, you can dive a lot deeper into the details of it, and you can actually help create these environments and this culture to motivate the players. And you got to be able to, you know, be there for the individual players. And I find it actually very rewarding now because it's such different man management than when I played. You know, it's not, this is the way we do it. You either get on board or we're going to find somebody who accepts it. No, there's a lot of like, okay, well, what did you see out there? What's your perspective? Why did you do that? Okay, well, let's talk about it. Did you have other options there? And it's, you know, there's definitely a give and take to learn from it. And you got to get players to understand it and not just follow. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you start to get all these players on board with that vision, then it's very powerful to see a team like ours, you know, all operate in that one way because, you know, you look at the different styles of soccer that these players come from, and all of them come from different backgrounds. They all have different ideas of what football should look like, you know, how to play out from the back or how to attack and how to defend. They all have different ways. So I think the biggest and most rewarding is when you can get them to all believe in a certain way or a certain style.
Yeah, it's having that cohesion together, like it's having that
Yeah,
team buy-in.
massively.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. I remember talking to some Valor players, and they were talking about like how COVID brought them a lot closer together during the bubbles, and like how that cohesion really helped out on the pitch performances. So if you could really get the team together and how they can operate as one, like you said, different backgrounds, different styles of play. If you have them come together and buy in, it's just only going to make it that much easier on the pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it is, you know, if you're happy showing up for work and you feel like you're valued and your opinion matters and you have a role in the team, you're willing to sacrifice and give more for the club, right? It's not just about you as an individual and how far you can go. So I think that's been something that's been kind of our superpower here is the culture that we've actually built with it. And, you know, nobody's bigger than the club. No individual is bigger than the club. It's a club first mentality. And, you know, we are better together. We're stronger together. And I think that's been, you know, something that we've really instilled into these players.
Well, and you know what? I'm seeing it firsthand. Like, I mean, I've been watching Cavalry this season. I mean, big win yesterday, by the way, against Athletic Ottawa.
Our home opener. So that was a good one, especially after what happened in the final. You know, to be on the losing end of it, it's always good to have a little bit of redemption in the new season. But you know, I think we're a new team this year. We have a different energy to us, and we're a more exciting team than we were last year. And we've picked up some really good players to fill some big voids, obviously with some players moving on. But I think, you know, anybody who watched the game yesterday saw, you know, that we're going to be a definite force to be reckoned with this year.
Absolutely, and, you know, I'm excited to see. I'm now that I don't have a club anymore, and it sounds
you don't have allegiance to anybody.
Yeah,
you can support everybody. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But I have to say, personal favorite though, Moosey is my honestly because his Winnipeg connection. He's my favorite. So
yeah, nice. He's a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah. So you know what, Nick? I just want to say thank you so much again, just for talking about your career. I mean, like you're obviously one of the most legendary Canadian footballers here. Had an amazing career in Germany. I mean, it's only a shame we had this amount of time to talk about your career. I mean, I bet you have so many more stories and just many more things to talk about here. But you know, I just want to say thank you again for being here on the podcast and sharing your journey in general, because this will serve as a lot of inspiration here, not only for the youth players, just for Canadian supporters in general. And you know, with you at the helm there, help coaching Cavalry there, it's only sky's the limit. And you know what, to kind of tie in and help kind of write a nice little bow on this podcast here, I wanted to end it here with this. So with this beautiful game called Football Manager. So they have you in the game, by the way. They actually have a full bio about you, which I'll send to you I'll send it to you after.
Yeah, you should send it over. I'd be interested.
And I'm letting you know it's detailed, very detailed.
Okay,
so,
maybe I don't want it. Maybe I don't want it then.
It's good. It's good. Trust me. So okay, so they kind of changed with the system this year, but they have like coaching categories here, and basically they have like they rate it on like good, very good, like outstanding, like etc.
Yeah.
So they gave you a mental your highest attribute in this game was a very good, and you got one. You got one here. So I'll give you out of 4 to choose from which one's the very good one. Adaptability.
Okay.
Authority. Determination. Motivating.
Well, let's go determination.
So they gave you good. They gave adaptability a very good.
Wow, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
that's probably because the head coach Tommy says so much about adaptability in so many interviews. They probably just snagged that word out.
probably did.
And
Oh yeah. But yeah, that was your. But they gave you good for both determination and authority.
okay, and where do I have rooms for improvement? What do you got for me?
You talked about people management. They gave you competent, and
Competent. Oh, they got to get in the locker room a little more then.
I gotta
See the
tell you
inside. See the inside
now
work that's being done.
the coaching attributes. So
Okay.
I'll give you a list here. So your highest one was good, and I'll give you a
Okay.
couple here. So there was attacking,
Yeah.
fitness, set pieces, defending, and possession. Which one do you think one of those was the good one?
Let's go with attacking.
So they gave you average for that one.
Okay.
They gave you good for possession. So they're saying that
Interesting.
in training.
They obviously didn't watch the game yesterday.
I'm telling you, this is what they gave you the
What
stats
I mean,
for.
35% possession, but 3 goals.
Hey,
there you go.
Possession's
See?
one of the most what do you call it? It's one of the most misleading stats.
Exactly.
And
well, so what you're saying is I got room for improvement, which is good. So I'm still early on in my career.
just also
So we'll be
mentioning
all
here
right.
too, they gave you working with youngsters good as well.
Okay.
So, but
I'll
yeah,
accept
they gave
that.
you for competent defending, average in attacking. They gave you tactical average and technical average. So, I'll send you a screenshot. But no, still very good stats. So, for just starting out as a coach. But just wanted to mention that too. And then my last fun question. I mean, we all love. I'm sure you played FIFA growing up, or played
Yeah.
FIFA at some point. Probably used your own player. But I guess I have to ask you this. So, okay. In the latest edition that you were in FIFA 17, what do you
FIFA
think?
17, jeez.
What do you
Okay,
think? What do you
yeah.
think was your highest stat at that time that they
Whoa.
gave you?
I was
You're 31,
was
32.
probably a high 60 would probably be the top.
So at that time they gave you a 63.
See,
I know.
I got some work to do.
I know. Well, I mean, they also did give you. So I'll kind of give you just some of your highest stats here, though. Good pace. They actually gave you 69 acceleration, 68 speed. You have incredible balance. Apparently, they gave you 72.
Interesting. I'd like to know how they found that one out.
Trust me. I mean, they not always gonna say they're the best for the ratings here, but they also gave you 70 aggression.
I could see that for
Yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah, that'd be up there.
but
Controlled aggression.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. But yeah, no, I thought that was just some of the fun stats there. I'll send you screenshots of this if you want to
Nice.
see it. But
Love that.
Nick, I just want to say thank you again so much for being here and just talking about your journey. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, you've been one that I've been wanting to talk to, and I just want to say thank you again so much for your time and just. I know you're busy with Cavalry in the season, but just overall, this again, thank you so much for being here. And is there anything that you want to shout out? Anything you kind of got going on that you wanted to mention?
No, I mean, right now, like you said, we're just diving into season. This is season number 8 for us at Cavalry. So we just finished our second game. So yeah, again, for us, it's just about growing the game and helping progress it in the right way across the country. I mean, I think everybody's looking forward to that World Cup coming up to get on board. But, what I would say is, help make it a movement and not just we host the World Cup and then we don't have a legacy with it afterwards, right? There has to be something that comes with hosting a World Cup. And, if you can't get out to watch a game, make sure you're supporting your local team and help grow the game that way. Because obviously everybody's not going to get out to watch the games, but I think in your own community, you can always get out and support and help in one way or another.
Yeah.